Okay, this is a video for the Tanchjim HANA. This is the new one. Maybe V2 would have been better. Looks similar to the original. It's tuned different, which is a good thing because the other one needed some improvements and this did it. You've got two sets of spare white tips. You've got like a manual, I guess. You've got a HANA card. This is a girl. I have students that are named Hana. It's a popular name in Japan, and this girl's name is Hana, I guess. So that's the character. This is a warranty card. This is kind of like a warranty card. I don't know what this is. This is spare filters for the top. This is the box. It says new. Again, I probably would have gone with V2 myself. This is a closer look of the set. It is nice. If you notice there, it's got that black. Usually this is part of the tuning process, this right here, as opposed to the steel mesh that goes on the top is just keeping ear gunk out. Sometimes this, like Sony did, this is actually part of the tuning, maybe to tone down the treble a little bit or something like that. Reminds me of another set that you are all probably very familiar with. Bro, nobody knows that set right there. Okay, anyway, another time. So it's a single dynamic driver. Looks nice. One little complaint while we're here before we get to the desk is it says right on the bud that I would probably not confuse with anyway. But it's very difficult to make out. I can't, looking through this camera lens, see it on the cable, which is the part where I'd be thinking left or right, not the buds actually. So that's just a little thing to pick on a little bit. I don't know if that's Hana too. I don't know what that character is right there. That's a close-up look of it though. And I'll talk about some music. How does it play bass guitar? How does it play my library? How vocals, male and female? How's Stevie Nicks doing? How's Chris Cornell doing? How does this treat my library? I'll go ahead and let you guys know. People sometimes complain, could you please give us a closer look at the item? There you go. Closer look at the item. And now we're up. Okay, this is a video for the Tanchjim HANA, which is right there. This is the new version. V2 probably would have been a better name, but it's the new version. It has a sub bass and a mid bass that pretty much falls in line with what I would like ideally. My own target, I've said previously, I'd like to pull the mid bass in, not this part where it terminates, but it's elevated. Pull it in just a little bit, which this would be, the HANA line is quite nice. This would be kind of my ideal, and it's reflecting in the music that I listen to. I find it to be quite appealing. It's got actual mids before it starts to take its gain. Its gain is right on the line of what I like. I think the tuning overall is good. I believe that the prior version of the HANA had much less sub bass and maybe even a little bit more gain, so it was tilted bright with a little less energy in the low end, whereas this set feels a little fuller, warmer. There's a little more note weight going on. It just feels like a more authentic replay of most of the instruments in my library. Before we get started, I just want to talk about three cool things because this got brought up just by chance. Somebody sent me a screenshot of something. Marvin Gaye, he's called a crooner, like a modern Motown black Frank Sinatra, but twice as cool as Frank, and he could sing like a motherfucker. And his album and the song What's Going On about the Vietnam War, he was a very important figure in his time in music and timing. They would not release the album at the time because it didn't match Motown's image of Marvin and what they wanted to get out of him, and also Motown Records didn't want any drama, so they really held back on that album that turned out to be an iconic, and I think was the most played or requested in Vietnam on the stations. I think was What's Going On. This is Sexual Healing, but I find him to be quite cool. Another cool person, moving to the white people, Steve Gadd with the iconic shuffle at the beginning of 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover. Just fucking savage, absolutely dope. Moving back over to African American, we've got the Jimi Hendrix Experience, Foxy Lady, live in Maui, 1970. This would probably be the apex of cool. Probably when he does a split and does the snake tongue. Oh yeah, and then pull on. Oh, what's he doing? What's he doing? What's he doing? Cover your eyes. That's not meant for kids. Jimi Hendrix is cool. So look at that ghetto mic cover. Boom boom bam boom boom bam boom boom dun 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 dun. You know you are a cute little heartbreaker. Dun, 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 dun. That is a cool motherfucker right there. So we got Jimmy, we got Steve Gadd, and we got Marvin Gaye. Cool dudes. Close all the tabs. Let's close it down and get into the music. Listening to Big Boy, Kill Jill. The bass hit sounds good. The Vocaloid at the beginning of it, which is something that I have to either get through to get to the bass hit or enjoy as I travel through it. I found it to be enjoyable. It wasn't too offensive. When I got to the bass hit, I found it to be accurate. It had good punch. Of course, because it's a single dynamic, was able to resolve the triple hit without a problem. I took my own set and listened to it because it graphs quite similar to the HANA. I thought it had more impact, and that might be due to the driver material, or that it's got a tuning chamber kind of on the inside of the mele. It's mele, which means sound or music in Hawaiian. That's the name I went with because I'm from Hawaii. So I thought it's got, so that's another thing. Graphs will tell you some of the story, but not all of it. These look quite similar in the bass region, but the mele actually has more impact. But they both did this well. There was no overemphasis, like too much. It wasn't indicating some kind of bloat, which I would be able to pick up on this track, which is Black Sabbath, Masters of Reality. Sweet Leaf, particularly 2 minute, 30-second to about 3 minutes, about a 30-second window where the bass pulls and releases are very fast, and the drummer are two low-frequency instruments going on at the same time and really battling for space because they're in the same spot of the frequency range. Part of them, they're overlapping, and it's happening at the same time. The drums were easy to resolve. The hardest part is the pulls of the bass guitar is very fast, and that's okay. It's the decay, the release, that can sometimes get blurred because he's pulling and releasing very fast. I thought that the HANA resolved that quite well, which is a big point. So the HANA V2 is a much improved set over the original one. I just called the V2 subconsciously without thinking because it actually is the V2. Listening to Marvin Gaye, which I already talked about. Sultans of Swing. Again, I'm listening to the bassist on this because his positioning is kind of relative to the mid bass. Whenever there's mid bass that's a little bit overtuned, a little bit too much, it'll give you the psychoacoustic illusion that the bassist is more forward and also is in the same space with the vocalist, which is like I'm talking about. I guess I'm talking about separation a lot of the time because when I'm talking about the drummer and the bassist, I'm talking about being able to perceive them as being separate and not like right next to each other. And that's what the Sweet Leaf track is used for. Sultans of Swing is kind of the same thing. Mark Knopfler's vocals, the lower part of the fundamentals, and also the bassist are kind of in the same spot. When the mid bass is a little bit emphasized, it's elevating Mark's vocals and it's pulling the basses forward. In the HANA's replay, I didn't really find that to be the case. I thought that it placed it with slight emphasis, which is really the high fidelity version, which is faithful reproduction. That's kind of the way that it's supposed to sound. If you're familiar with this track, I thought that it sounded quite good. So the bass on a 4-string bass guitar, on a 808 Roland machine, I thought it sounded good. A deck mixed hit, again, with Kill Jill Big Boy, I thought it sounded good. Drum play sounds good. So the bass on the HANA is fine. So that's the bass. Nothing to complain about. There's no sense of the psychoacoustic illusion of something being slow. 55 hertz is 55 hertz. It's an extension or traction and a return to original position. One of those in a second is 1 hertz. 55 of those in a second is 55 hertz. That's how many times that vibrates in a second. So when people talk about slow or fast, it's not actually slow or fast, but the perception, your brain might sound slow. The HANA actually doesn't at all. It sounds quite good. I'm actually just going to keep rolling instead of spreading this into... Nah, you know what? That's bass. Let me stop it. Bass is fine. Okay, the mids. Def Leppard, Pyromania. This is a fucking classic from way back in the day. All I want is a photograph. I wanna touch you. Bum, 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 bum. Electric guitar with distortion pedals, a screaming vocalist, 80s quality production, which is actually pretty decent on this album. I thought it sounded good. I wasn't getting any sharp edges. I wasn't getting any sense of impending fatigue that might come from an elevation in the upper mids that might be somewhat a little bit extreme, causing me to think that stuff like Rat, Def Leppard, and things like that might not actually be matching to the set. I actually found it to be quite good. Van Halen, Ain't Talking About Love, U2 Seconds. I listened to U2, the part where there's a guy talking in front of a TV that is playing advertisement for the U.S. Army Reserves, and so it's like three things. It's the song itself, it's something dub behind it, and then within that dub is another sonic event. It seemed to resolve that quite good, so the mids seemed to be quite clear. Grateful Dead Ripple, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. This is really a... I thought before when I used to do that this was something like Steely Dan, where everything sounds good on this. Actually, that's not really true. Sometimes things like Ripple, the vocals can sound too emphasized. The harmonic part of the vocals of Jerry Garcia can sound a little bit too much like Ozzy sometimes, like it's like he's stepping forward or part of his voice is being emphasized. It's very strange the way the brain takes manipulation of treble with earphones, because there's no other... It's filling your ear canal. It's like an earplug. And actually Jerry Garcia and Ripple can sometimes be messed up, so it's not quite like Steely Dan. I've not really heard a lot of stuff that doesn't play Steely Dan well, but Ripple I'll take out of that, because actually that I thought that sounded good. Hey 19 by Steely Dan actually sounded really good. Robert Palmer, Sneakin' Sally Through the Alley. Let me stop here. Led Zeppelin 2, I did this before. You see that slight ragged right there? Ramble On. I like this at the last review that I did, because it's the tempo. It might not change, but it sounds like it does at the beginning. It's very quiet. Robert Plant's kind of talking. There's a tale that can't be told, and the drums. John Bonham is using his hands on drum. And then it explodes into a legit 70s rock song. Or Led Zeppelin 2 was released in 69, 70. I don't recall right off the top of my head. The first album was 69, 68. The second album maybe was 69, 70. I'm not really sure. So that would be a 60s or 70s track. This is getting jaggy. Something you got to know about J River. You got to update it. When you update it, you got to pay to update it. So I'm stuck on an older version because I'm not really into giving them more of my money. Sneakin' South Through the Alley by Robert Palmer, I think sounded good. MNOPQR. This is an album that's fucking classic. He's got one of the best voices ever. Sailing Shoes, Hey Hey Julie, Sneakin' South Through the Alley, like a triple play. They're three songs that glide right into each other. Put on my sailing shoes, everyone. Put on your and then it goes dun 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 dun. There's no pause. There's no break. Hey hey Julia, you're acting so peculiar. I knew I'd never fool you in a million years. Very very vocal centric. He's got epic fucking vocals. And then that track, Hey Hey Julia, goes right into Sneakin' Sally Through the Alley when he's screaming. There's a harmonica going on. I thought this did that very well. And again, like Def Leppard, I didn't feel like I was going to get any kind of fatigue. And by this point in listening, I wasn't fatigued. So I think that the Hana has very appealing tuning, and it's doing it well. I'm not finding anything that I can say that might be a problem for some people. With my library, I haven't stumbled into it yet. So I think it treats the mids. I think it treats guitar, acoustic guitars, that portion of it. I think it treats vocals, Fleetwood Mac, Dreams, Stevie Nicks, also ABC. Here we go. And here you go again. You say you want your freedom. That sounded fine. Never Going Back Again. This is the one with God, what the fuck is his name? They were having an affair. Everybody in this group was pretty much playing around with each other. Stevie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham. I'm sorry. Holy shit. I need to eat lunch. Lindsey Buckingham It's basically him and the guitar and her voice and then him, so they're kind of doing a duet and a guitar. It's a very simple thing. I thought both of them were played back in a very appealing way. There was no overemphasis of Stevie's voice, female, slightly throaty and more towards the male scale, actually. And then Lindsey Buckingham I thought sounded good too. This is one of my all-time favorite Fleetwood Mac tracks. It's very short, it's very simple, there's not a lot going on. There's no sudden explosions with drums coming in or other stuff. It's really pretty much a guitar and a male and female singer. And there was a lot of emotion going on at the time of this album's creation. You can kind of feel it in some of the tracks, and this was one of them. Another one from another album, Avalanche, that was another one where you could kind of feel the pain going on. So I think the mids are great actually on this. Probably the strong point of the set, and that's the mids. Okay, finally, let's talk about the treble. If this set had a weak point, I don't consider it actually to have it, it would be it doesn't have the same type of extension that maybe ESTs have. However, I'm a big DD fan, and like the Belons and the YBF, rest in peace, the QC killed that set. I don't find those to be lacking, though sometimes there's a... You can't really hear, or a lot of people, their hearing doesn't really extend that much effectively beyond 13 kilohertz, 13 or 14. And then if you take a spectrogram and you take lossless files, FLACs, DSTs, and you filter everything from 11, 12 up, there's almost nothing out there. However, a psychoacoustic illusion of a sense of air can be had by elevation there. So if there is a weak point, it would be that, though. Let me give you an example of this is called Little Feat Dixie Chicken. Even on the Waiting for Columbus album, which is this one right here. My mother had this when I was a kid, and I just used to think this was weird as hell. Tomato Head, specially priced 2 LP set on 1 compact disc. Oh fuck. Well, anyway, the album looked the same as the disc. It looked just like this, and I thought it looked weird. And on this album is a live version of that, which is this. It's not this particular version right here. He's doing a slide guitar right here. There's a lot of stuff going on this. There's harmonicas, there's horns, there's drums, there's a regular drum kit. I think that there's 2 bassists in here. And of course it's live, and you've got the crowd that's coming in at certain points, and it sometimes sounds like it's from the left, right, or all the way around, as much as you can get a perception of spacing. Usually it's seems like the virtual left and right and to the back, and then it seems like it's above your head if you've ever done those Chesky's tests. It's very hard to get the illusion of something straight out in front of you. It sounds like it's above you, maybe slightly forward, but behind you, if you listen to something like Pink Floyd On the Run from 26 to 58 seconds, that actually just after the 58 seconds where the ships start panning left to right, it seems like you can hear it going behind your head and then out to the opposite direction. So behind panning or above panning sounds like it's totally possible, and I hear it. Stuff that seems like it's going in front of you, that's a harder thing to get. Oh, that is Emmy. I was just about to say, is that Bonnie Raitt? That is her. That's her right there. So this track actually didn't sound intimate, I guess is the polite word of saying something doesn't sound like it's got a lot of space. I thought it sounded accurate, which is to say high fidelity, which is a faithful reproduction of the original. So I wouldn't have thought that this was some kind of a... I have heard this set not sounding like it had the liveness to it, but this HANA set doesn't actually do that. It sounds quite good. So the treble, also using Boston 4-play. It's been such a long time where it's got that, sounds like digital raindrops coming down. Bruce Springsteen, Born to Run, which has got a glockenspiel. It's got a lot of upper energy. It literally sounds like digital raindrops. Glockenspiel. It's way up in the register, about as high as you can go. I'm sure you can go higher, but in my library, that's probably one of the highest. Led Zeppelin, Hey, What Can I Do? The repeated cymbal strikes at 7, 13, 16, 28, 37, 47. Yeah, I actually wrote that all down. They sound great. They've got a good birth, life, and death. They don't sound overextended and like they've got too much energy, and they don't sound abruptly cut like they're just a psh, like sometimes BAs do. Dynamic drivers don't tend to do that much. That's why the microdynamic in the Z1R creates an exceptional replay, particularly in the treble. I say it many times. I think the specialty of the Z1R is the way that it handles the treble. There's not a lack of authenticity to the treble presentation, though it's slightly emphasized. It sounds accurate. So if they had stuck a BA in the mids and the treble, I don't think the Z1R would be what it was. It obviously wouldn't be, but I don't think it would be anything close. I think that DD BA link to DD micro DD was fucking epic. So I think that this is playing back treble well, and the upper harmonics of cymbal strikes, guitar solos sound faithfully reproduced. So I think that the treble's fine too. Again, the only knock that I would find on this set would be that you might find the fit to be slightly shallow, though it's small, so it should be able to get into your ear. But Tanchjim is this, the O2 is the same thing. I'm not quite sure why it goes that way, but that's the way it is. And then it doesn't have the extension that some ESTs seem to have, but I'd be making it up if I said I could pick it up. Like, listen to the Oracle and listen to the same thing. Does it sound bigger? No, actually, no. It doesn't graph in the same way, but I'm not losing anything in the treble with this set. So that's the HANA. I think that the bass sounds good. I think that the graph is a relatively accurate representation of what you're going to get. You will get bass and mid bass, slightly less mid bass than I call for, but that's actually more correct to what I want. It's got actual mids. It's got upper mids that sound fine, actually. It's not, doesn't sound like it's over energized to me. And then it's got the harmonic extensions of a lot of stuff that's in my library being done in a way that I find to be pleasing. I don't find it to be fatiguing. I don't find it to be overly bassy. Seems to resolve quite well. Next video will probably be my set, the Melee. Do I wreck the HANA? I think it's a competitive set in its price range, and there's a lot of people that are DD lovers. Is this a good DD? It is. It's a good one. It's not on par with the IE900, but that'll cost you over $1,000. And it's not as much difference as some people might imply. It's particularly Sennheiser, who just crapped on a couple other companies with their interview talking about bone conduction drivers should be for, or something like that. I think companies should shut the fuck up when it comes to being critical of their competition. You just sold yourself too, by the way. And it's not like the HD 800 didn't make every fucking thing you listen to sound like you were in the middle of Madison Square Garden with nobody in the... Jazz is supposed to sometimes sound like you're in a small room listening to a quartet. That's the way it's supposed to sound. It's not supposed to sound like four guys are in the boxing ring at Madison Square Garden playing to a massive arena like the HD 800 might do. So that's what Sennheiser did for years, and people just kept eating that shit up. I think it's a way overhyped set. Like the T1 by Bear Dynamic, that's another ridiculous set. So companies need to shut the fuck up. Let us reviewers stick our foots in our mouths while you guys shut your ass. Tanchjim HANA, good set. Not as good as my set though, and I'll be specific. I'm gonna hype my own set. I had great input and decided on its tuning. Why would I not? I can get it, but that doesn't match my character. I'm gonna hype the hell out of it because I love it. It's what I wanted it to be, and it looks a lot like the HANA actually. Tuning a dynamic driver is different from tuning hybrids or tribrids. You've got to consider different things. There are limits to what you can do. I'll explain that in the other video. And I'm out.